Alan Clements Uncensored. Thank you for listening to my podcast. A few notes about the presentation. After years of scripted talks, many of them methodically outlined, some even memorized, at least in part, I decided to drop that style and simply speak spontaneously from my heart. So that's what I do. My talks are raw and improvisational. I make them up as I go along. In addition to my World Dharma talks, I also offer at times readings from my books, Instinct for Freedom, A Future to Believe in, The Voice of Hope, and Wisdom for the World. I also offer readings of my personal notes, sometimes guided meditations, dialogues from my World Dharma public forums, interviews from radio and television, and sections from my show, Spiritually Incorrect Meets Relationship Incorrect, The Great Reckoning, and the occasional conversation with someone I find interesting. I also want to express my deep gratitude to the people who have made donations to me, either a one-time or recurring donation, either on the support page of my website, alanclements.com, or pledged a monthly amount as little as $1, perhaps $3 or even $5 a month, through my Patreon site. If you're inspired to do so, you can support this podcast and my work by making a monthly pledge at Patreon. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/Alan Clements, and there you'll find my page. You can use a credit card or pay through PayPal, and your monthly pledge, that's what it takes, just a few minutes to set up, allows me not only to do my work, it allows me to create my art, use my voice, speak my Dharma, free of commercial consideration or advertisers. Thank you from my heart for taking the time to listen to my podcast, and thank you for your generous support. I hope you enjoy the presentation. So good morning. Good morning to all of you. From my heart to yours, thank you for being here. We're here in Ubud, Bali, Indonesia, on day 3 of this virtual retreat, exploring world Dharma, in context to this global crisis that we are all in. So thank you for those of you who are online watching and listening. I've been sharing quite a bit about how to consciously occupy consciousness as refuge to support higher qualities of consciousness and freedom and deeper rootedness within values, principles, sourced by purpose and meaning. We're finding refuge. I won't use the word our true home, but a temporary and temporal home called being, embodied, within the primordial flow of this transparent extraordinariness called consciousness. Obviously, we are situated temporarily on Earth, with gravity holding us down and up, spinning through this unoptional orbit around a sun star, stating the obvious. Very easy to lose perspective. In a solar system with discernible planets, with principles and physics. In a galaxy, a multitudinous of galaxies.
And physics tells us today, the quantum world, that we're embedded within a multidimensional metaverse where there is simultaneous, deep intelligences interpenetrating in the field that we live in at this very moment. Governed, I carefully use the word, by laws and principles certainly beyond my understanding. And here we find ourselves on a Monday morning in Ubud, communing and sharing in this exploration of making good on the promise of what it meant to find ourselves born in this universe, in this world, at this moment of critical hyper-complexity with the coronavirus, and let's not neglect totalitarianism, dictatorship, war and famine, starvation, rape, denigration, predation, deceit, lies, the convulsions of consciousness within this field, right? Fair enough. We see them on the news, we hear them in our hearts, we feel them coming through our own primordial flow. None of us are exempt, stating the obvious again, from greed, fear, and anger. And so here we sit within this mind and body, and we use the word meditation to try to situate wise qualities of consciousness within this primordial flow of mind and body, within this ambient multidimensional universe. I'm not saying let's try to understand it, but let's do what we can within our means to create a greater, more secure abode within this temporal madness that we're embedded. So a few things that I would like to share with you that I've reflected upon this morning to illuminate more from my point of view the meaning for me of meditation, bhavana. And if I could just state a few of them first and then go down them. You know, there's different ways to occupy consciousness. And meditation is the conscious occupation of consciousness for the purpose of knowing its contents, its behavior, and principles. So we're employing consciousness to understand its own habitat. And we're choosing to use skillful states of mind to employ the adventure of consciousness to understand its environment. That's all that we're doing. And it's non-posture-based activity. Meditation is the conscious employment of the most liberating states of consciousness to understand its own inner environment in context of the outer environment in all postures. So we're not posture-specific in meditation. I would call that meditative apartheid. The bending of the arm, the reaching, the looking, the hearing, the tasting. We're entities, stating the obvious again, with these endowments, if you will, perceptual portals, eyes, ears, nose, bodies, tongues, minds, the six senses. We are embodied beings that have the gift and the tragedy of knowing its own interior and its exterior on the terms of its conditioning, refracted through its thoughts, perceptions, hopes, and dreams. And then there's reality. There's a reality. Gravity is keeping me upright. The Earth is spinning in discernible orbits around a sun star. There's temperatures. There's food, there's nurturing. Lots of very, very deeply embedded information that define our existence in context to the whole. Meditation is the discovery of the lawfulness of consciousness within the body on the terms of what liberates it from fear. That's it. The vocation of liberation from fear. Not that you're liberated from fear or greed or anger, but the process of an elegant liberating process. the dawning of freedom. Fair enough? I want to keep it very relative, stating the obvious. Gradations of transformation, wisdom, purity are very nuanced, right? So right there, we're asking ourselves with the meditative mind, one of the qualities that we wanted to co-join with this confluence of inner and outer is, I would call it, meditative elegance, an aesthetic of poise, purpose, vulnerability, colors on the palette of transformational wisdom. Therein lies my own unique expression of meditative humanness, if you will, rather than the vigilance of how it should be versus how I'm not attaining what I want to attain on the terms of my own ego or greed. Finding a dance, a music, a poetry is one of the first ways for me to practice observational meditation, point one. Mindfulness is very much an observational, engaging, interior practice of observing the phenomena at the senses as they come and go. There, though, it requires an aesthetic where we can be erotically, playfully, poetically, artistically, humanly, intimately related to the process of sterility of observation. We're not just empiricists and scientists of consciousness. We're human beings with refined taste and refining of those tastes. So I really encourage you to encourage me to stay in truth to your own personal music. Each of us have this breathtaking similarity to the snowflake. Each of us are unique. No two are alike. Although we have the 6 portals of the senses and we seem to be endowed with the body and hands and eyes. But this confluence of interior consciousness and how we, figuratively speaking, go about intimately observing and engaging the first point of meditation, the flow of consciousness within the body, within the context, takes a certain degree of respect for how we dance, how we make love, how we eat, how we dress, how we bathe, how we put on makeup, how we live, how we die. Each of us will do it differently. May I encourage you to encourage me to really allow ourselves to do it differently. And at times, contexts are so triggering that the next thing you know, you're poised in enlightenment, and all of a sudden you see a flying ant, and it scares you, and you go, oh my God, I'm not enlightened at all. I have so much fear just by a little flying ant that bit my arm, and I feel now in pain. People get awakened. So watching the dance versus the idea of what dancing looks like, coming down off the postural preferences of what I think I should look like in the process of awakening. That takes a very humble, wise mind to disavow ourselves from ideological projections of how a meditator should look, a human being in a spiritual suit should look. Undress, get naked, and identify yourself with poise and authenticity in the mirror of your own mind. Meditation is the process of becoming more intimately respectful of the nakedness of organic consciousness, with the degree of how I'll reveal a very personal thing, not too personal. I stopped smoking cigarettes 25 years ago. I quite frankly didn't know what to do with myself, because I was really married to Marlboro Light. He and I were really buddies. I wrote books with him, traveled to war zones with him. I taught meditation retreats with him. He and I were down with each other. When in doubt, go to a place, have a glass of wine, and Marlboro Light and I would hang out. I felt secure. I'd race through showers and dinners and conversations, not race, because Lucky and I were like best friends. Lucky rocked more than people. I loved nicotine coming and going in my brain. But when I gave up cigarettes, I gave up Lucky, I gave up dopamine, I gave up nicotine, I gave up security. I didn't know this. And all of a sudden I had all this time in my hands where I was blind to the race. I'm just using. And I said, my goodness, I have so much time in my hands. So I'm not going to take any more showers. I'm going to bathe and take my time. I don't want to get through the shower to get back to Lucky and write another book. And I decided to start washing my face more slowly. I bought nice soaps, bought nice cream. I wasn't through to the next. And I had to really stop and learn how to more elegantly abide in a beautification of my own being that I denied. I say this to respect the process of meditation. It requires coming down off certain addictions. May I encourage you to encourage me? What are some of the more insidious addictions that you have? Taking mind and body as abode, temporary as it is. It comes and it goes, clearly, moment to moment. And then eventually, if we had a body here, the 250,000 that die every day, all the people in intensive care that will die today, death would be very real. In-breath, out-breath. Taking the addiction out of consciousness, taking the habit out of consciousness, and creating a new aesthetic there. It says, I'm going to interrupt the preference and occupy now time observational engagement of the primary experience of what I'm doing. Back to point one. When you reach, are you really reaching, or are you drinking to satisfy a certain health need to get bored again on not knowing what to do? Or are you making the vocation of true engaged presence the very human action of reaching for the drink, drinking this incredibly beautiful coconut water and ginger combination and tasting it? So with aesthetics, there's the issue of texture. May I encourage you to encourage me? When we walk and talk and move and sit, recline, bathe, wash, answer the call of nature, look at this magnificent, strange, ambient madness that we're embedded in. Study perception and the texture of your perception. When you touch something, do you really touch it? I don't know how well you feel. How well you really, 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 really feel the earth beneath your feet. One step at a time sometimes. Sitting meditation is beautifully complemented by walking. Many people in Burma, where I've lived, many of you know that, it's a monsoon season. It can rain and rain and rain torrential for days sometimes. You have to walk inside. They just walk up and down, sometimes very quickly and sometimes very slowly. They turn their home into the yekta, a monastery, a meditation center. A meditation center is not a home or a place. It's our interior relationship to being in consciousness. How well do you occupy now-time phenomenology and the observation of that phenomena? So when you're tasting, teachers would encourage you, what do you taste? How do you taste it? Are you in a hurry to get over the taste, to get to the next morsel of food, to satisfy the physics of your abdomen being extended? Or do you actually truly taste for the value of the texture, the taste, and the nutrient it gives you? Do you ever think of the farmers actually that ever make the food for you, Alan, and bring it to the monastery? Do you ever eat with gratitude? Or do you eat for the aesthetics of how you look? Addictions. Meditation is a fantastic engagement to look at these particular interior things that we often deny. Point one. The body, the senses, observation, engagement. Meditation, when I'm looking, look. When seeing, seen. When hearing, just that which is heard. Yes, that's Bach, Mozart. That's techno. You hear sound not outside of our ears, but on our ears. Do you really, really hear? Sometimes when you really listen, as you know so well, reminding me of the obvious, reminding you of the obvious, It can be, using something out of Japan, 10,000 notes within that one raindrop. We're asking ourselves today to become more refined, more sensitive. We're not under lockdown, we're under liberation from the conveniences and the habits, I dare say the addictions to the fossil fuel industry. All of us now can't fly as easily as before, but we're all addicts and killing the future of life by doing all the things that we do so blindly that now we've been restricted. So we're asked to re-inhabit organic tribal beingness, the body and the mind, on the terms of making consciousness become more conscious by consciously employing the most conscious states of consciousness to understand the environment of the inner in relationship to the body and the outer. On the terms of what releases fear, what releases greed, what releases anger, what elevates beauty, what elevates love, what elevates compassion. Those two aspects of the Dhamma are the vocation of the meditator. In classical Buddhist thought, there is the clear and deliberate use of what they call conscious reflection, which is different than observation and engagement. You can sit, walk, stand, do whatever one is doing, and consciously use consciousness to deliberately reflect on specific issues. Not just random wandering mind, but a deliberate reflection. For example, I'm in a conversation with someone, and someone's saying something which is inevitable that doesn't quite agree with how I see life and myself. And there's an associated, very quiet, sublimated judgment that they really are just speaking from a place that's unexamined, or some kind of narrative that allows you the righteousness of the judgment being true. We all know what that means. And then your Dhamma, your meditative mind, kind of awakens, and all of a sudden you have this moment of conscience, and you go mindfully of conscience, reflecting upon your judgment as more important than fusing with the judgment. And you notice a thought then of competition. But she's wrong, or he's wrong. But Alan, making someone wrong doesn't make you right. Conscious reflection brings you back into, consciousness and conscience and mindfulness and patience are all now simultaneously arising. And you say, okay, I'm going to when I'm going back home, to reflect on the disadvantages of anger. I'm going to write them down in my own Dharma book, my meditation book. What are the disadvantages of judgment? What are the advantages of tolerance and resilience and patience and compassion? And write down 2 or 3 reflections of disadvantage and advantage for any state of mind that you feel that you want to support your observational, engaging mindfulness power. When in need, you bring those reflections to the forefront of inner being, reminding you to remind me to consciously reflect the disadvantages of anger. It only separates. 2, you suffer more than the validity of the anger projected on the person. You hurt more first. You're not aware of how you're sullying your own inner being by this unrecognized anger. But I like it. It feels right. The thoughts that you have of your anger are delusional. Point 3. When in doubt, what to do? I'm not quite equipped yet to just disavow myself from that anger. Politely walk away and separate yourself from the perceived object of anger. You walk away. Point 5. You now reflect and don't distract yourself so that the habit loop continues you reflect more intimately here. What is a higher way? What do you aspire to bring to the forefront of your presence with someone, not him or her? It could be triggered throughout eternity by infinite sources. This is just one convenient small place. I'd rather have a moment of being mindfully responsible with that anger and having the virtue to reflect back that I chose to challenge it when it arose and saw it relax. I want to have that virtue in my consciousness as memory. So I would encourage for every state of mind, what are the advantages of love? What are the advantages of compassion? What are the advantages of generosity? What are the disadvantages of greed? The disadvantages of impatience? So that we develop a kind of playbook with our meditative world that isn't just being mindful of the phenomena as it arises in the moment. Pretty simple. But I would call this particular practice developing Dhamma literacy. We learn words and phrases, we learn how to speak fluently. We don't have to remember them and to recall them when we speak them. But when it comes to meditative mind and the control of consciousness, we often have to learn how to employ them, to develop a recollection of that process and bring them to the forefront and employ them as conscious reflections in times of need. Repetition is another very powerful form of meditation. A deliberate employment of repetitive words and phrases to help evolve and co-evolve certain states of consciousness. So there's observation and engagement, there's deliberate reflection of advantages and disadvantages. And here we're talking about the deliberate use of repetitive phrases and words and sentences to evolve certain states of consciousness. Traditionally speaking, the cultivation of metta or loving kindness is repetitively using certain phrases and feeling the emotionality of those phrases. May I find peace in my heart. May I find conviction with vision. May I understand the contents of my own consciousness. May I dedicate my life to love and compassion. And whatever phrases that you find that might be most valuable to you, you write them down and you learn at times to deliberately, consciously employ, as we did as children, certain phrases and words and books. It's a kind of deliberate, not prayer towards something inner or outer, but it's seeing the value of how words have felt meaning. Conscious employment of consciousness, meditation, rather than just wandering mind, deliberately doing this or that, or letting it have it, I need to be here, I need to go there, I can't have that, all those particular thoughts of worry and restlessness and doubt and greed and fear, intercepting that play. May I know peace. May I genuinely employ states of mind to bring happiness to me. May I be free of suffering. May I dedicate my life to the benefit of all. Then specifically, there are people in our lives. It's one thing saying, I love you. And there's 10,000 ways in which we can act that and also say it. We know that. But when you meditate sometimes, you're just feeling it. And we have certain people in our lives that are alive and some that have died. And you can evoke their images and bring a feeling into your heart and repeat certain phrases to your loved one, to my daughter. Oh dear, wherever you are right now in this day, may you feel contentment and love. Deliberately using the emotional perfume, if you will, of creating an aromatherapy within consciousness. Oh dear, May you understand and feel the value of patience. Oh dear, may you find within this moment in time the satisfaction in small things. Words that work for you, and refine them, and just the practice is to stay patiently deliberate with their recitation, their repetition, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and using mindful intelligence to feel, not just think. At times you might be annoyed, you're just doing something kind of rote. All of a sudden you just kind of break into an interior smile and you begin to radiate and you feel it and you see them in your mind. And I see my mom wherever she is in this universe, in forms or disformed. Mom, wherever you are in this universe, may you find peace and happiness. And then when you really feel that you have moved into a place that is very right for you, you can extend this wave of loving kindness. May the beings in this community, the beings in this country, the beings on this planet, may all beings in this world, seen and unseen, known and unknown, close and near, the animals, the trees, the humans, may they all be free of fear. To me, there's something very valuable to employ what we do have access to, which is consciousness, in the most conscious way for the benefit of the all and the self. Right now we can't travel so easily. We can't have what we want so easily. So what can we do right now to create an abode of awakening within our own homes, and more primarily in our own inner being? Deliberately sending thoughts of love, thoughts of compassion, thoughts of patience. And I'll close with this and we'll continue on. What kind of friend are you? Is a question that comes to me. How well do you befriend yourself is the vocation of the meditator. How well do you care for other? How poetic, how nuanced, how intimate, how curious, how continually. We all crave the certainty of security on a certain level. I know I do. And what I'm really looking for there is, do you really, really care? And will I be rising to the challenge to care in times of challenge, which we're in? And herein lies a type of meditation where we put our entire being into play. And remember a story that Aung San Suu Kyi told me about resilience and hope and courage and dedication to friendship and allyship, mentorship, heart-holding, hand-holding, all the ways in which we can express, I'm there for you, I'm there for you. She said she read a book once when she was young of a blind girl in Iran, and the father and the mother, being staunch and deeply rooted in their religion and their conditioning, wanted a boy, not a girl. And to make matters really complicated, not only was she a girl, but she was a blind girl. And the father, based on whatever conditioning he had, as the story was told to me by Aung San Suu Kyi, he often, in an angry way, repeated a phrase I wish you were dead. Very severe, traumatic environment to encounter, I would think. Being blind and hearing that. And a family member whom was unobtrusive and very sensitive to the household and the family psychology knew in her heart, like most normal good people would, the wrongness of this, but unable to challenge the family structure and the ideology of that structure. So she had to learn skillful means to bring hope, resilience, patience, and emotional, spiritual intelligence to this girl's life. And over the course of this story, she told me many ways in which this family member brought hope and resilience, compassion, love, and patience to this girl. And I think of this story because she concluded by saying she read this in a book, and this girl grew up and became the first female graduate of Tehran University, blind, and wrote a book about her life. And it was all based upon the power of one. One witness, someone who believed in you and stood with you day in and day out against all odds and gave to you, befriended you, loved you. And I asked you to remind me, how can I be that family member to my own inner blindness? How would I nurture him? And how would I give to you? And therein lies a type of meditation that is very different than closed eyes, self-centric, mindful presence of phenomena. For me, it is life, meeting complexity in the most elegant, compassionate, wise expression at that confluence of God and the devil, right and wrong, darkness and light. And so wherever we are, I try to think sometimes out of the orthodoxy of meditation, to remembering this story. There are so many stories like this, of where I'm at, who I'm with, what could I do to show up to be your friend. And I think that's what I'm being called upon today to do, more and more in these circumstances. Call it the little things, minute to minute, hour to hour, the grace of goodness. So I close this morning with that and invite you to invite me to reflect on how to personalize these expressions of bringing consciousness to consciousness and consciousness to ourselves and goodness to each other in ways that keep taking it higher. Keep taking it higher. And I will close with this. I don't know about you, but it's very obvious to me, and I know it's obvious to you. There were people before us. We had mothers and fathers and grandparents. I don't know many of them past my great-grandparents. But apparently the earth is filled with life, the sediment, generations of life. I don't know where it even started, but way, 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 way back. None of us really knew, right? So in other words, this way, the future, where is it? Yes, do I want to survive and live well? Do I want to see anyone harmed? No. But guess what? We're all going to, stating the super, uber obvious, dissolve into photonic infinite invisibility, die. Taking the addiction out of dying. I think it's a fabrication and a totalitarian lie. I think it's the contemporary church of dictatorship, a way in which people believed in the existential orthodoxy and conveniently labeled it, but it's a lie. I'm not saying immortality, but my point here is that this invisibility that we're all in right now, not the oxygen, but this consciousness that animates us, look at the miracle that's nurturing this miracle. And what makes it really terrifyingly compelling is this invisibility that has the faculty of knowing, that can perceive through the senses. What I'm saying here is that although the form may relax its ability to move anatomically, I am wondering this continuum, this causal continuum. When a fire goes out, it didn't die, did it? The conditions for it are no longer there, but the fire still exists as, with the right conditions, there's the flame. This causality of consciousness is what I'm pointing to. And we're participants in the revolution of consciousness, stating the obvious. Although we will die, that's a certainty, but consciousness and the stream and the flow, the contents of consciousness may not be in the form that we know it, but the flow will continue. Life is. And I'm saying here, invest in that continuum. Bring the beauty in the best of that continuum, because there's going to be life in this continuum after we ourselves, as we know ourselves, clearly pass away. The earth is filled with death and life and death and life and life and life and death. In a trans-death existence, we are revolutionaries in consciousness. This is the way I see it. And so my investment in looking at you and relating to you with kindness and love is investing in the future of love. Because someone's going to pick up that field just like you and I did. I didn't invent love. I didn't invent meditation. I didn't invent generosity. It's a continuum of potencies and influences within this invisible field from previous revolutionaries. And for some reason, we've been stuck in this field where there is good, bad, and ugly. There is the devil and darkness. I'm not going to say it's an infinite duality, but I am going to participate in existential rebellion and revolution and do what I can in this field to disevolve from the identity of ego as much as humanly possible and sacrifice and be in civil disobedience to the wrong by making this moment right through being mindfully aware of how to be in blindness by giving and befriending this flow so that someone can see a little bit further down the road, just after the next extinction, and they have all of a sudden, here in Ubud, I'd like to talk to you about the beautification of consciousness, about the beauty of generosity. And it'll be a language like that boy or girl in Berlin spinning that unbelievable new music. It'll be a new music, a new religion, right? Think out of the box. Giorgio Bruno went to the gallows and was hung upside down and killed, burned for thinking of infinity as the epicenter of imagination. We're in this flow. Look where we are today if we didn't understand infinity. I'd be paranoid about walking too far to fall off the side of the earth. Square or thinking. So here we're compelled in the meditative way to use imagination, to invest in this primordial invisibility called consciousness, and let's give the most remarkable gift to the future by being the best that we can be, by taking it higher. There we create the conditions for the perpetuation of liberation, of freedom, of generosity, of compassion, of caring. And to me it relieves, okay, we all quote Gandhi, we all quote King, but we don't quote the millions and billions of other life forms and people and things and nature and gods and people and all kinds of incantations of behaviors who brought this moment into focus with the thoughts that we're thinking, the emotions that we have, So may I offer a final meditation as we move into the day. The power of prayer. Evoke in our hearts, in our souls and our minds, whatever it is that you wish to see in this universe. Stand, abide, and oxygenate and breathe. May the future of life find a security beyond anything known. I dedicate my existence, humble and quiet, to the future of peace. It's different than the recitation and repetition of beautiful thoughts. It's really doing your imaginative, infinite sense of what this universe could be. And so I encourage you to encourage me. Sometimes I take a walk where I'm staying, and I walk not mindfully, but something even more intimate than that, in prayer. And it gives my life a sense of purpose and meaning and heightened reverence. And so I leave you with that beginning today. And so may we take 10 minutes to reflect if you choose, and then come back and we'll have a chance to talk and commune together. So from my heart to yours, thank you. And thank you for being here today.
That has been Alan Clements Uncensored. Thank you for listening. You can find the entire list of my podcasts at alanclements.com, along with my books and upcoming events and live broadcasts. In addition, you can also book a private session with me if you wish by phone or Skype on the website. If you're a regular listener or simply feel moved to support my work, you can make a one-time donation or a recurring donation, a tax-deductible one, in any amount you feel comfortable, either on the support page of alanclements.com or a monthly pledge through my Patreon site at patreon.com/Alan Clements. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and thank you for sharing word of it among your friends and on social media. Thank you from my heart. Until the next time, blaze on with fearless love.